What is going on? Welcome to the Only Football podcast. Today it is Only Football with Kyle. We're going to go through the power rankings. We're going to go through some post-draft stuff, news roundup, cuts, and everything left. But first, let's hit the intro. What is going on? Welcome to the Only Football podcast. My name is Kyle. We have a lot to talk about, and I got to say, I have been doing something that I'm going to tell you guys first before I put it on YouTube, just because I feel like it's the right thing to do. Because you guys I don't know what you guys are going to think about it, but I have spent the day today writing. Well, let me back up. I am putting together videos for 32 teams. It is entirely more time consuming than I could possibly have imagined, because what I'm doing is I'm going through each team and I'm writing basically the story of their season. I'll give you a quick example. This would be like a sneak peek of the Green Bay Packers, okay? And that's the only one I'm going to do. And I don't want to give too much away of what I'm doing here, but you know that we did the algorithm and stuff like that. So basically, let me do this first, and I'll tell you the second part. So this is how the Packers would go, okay? It's only fitting Jordan Love's first game as a Green Bay Packer will be against the Chicago Bears. The Packers lead the all-time series with a record of 105, 95, and 6. But this is the first opportunity in 32 years for the Bears to boast the best quarterback on the field, depending on Love's performance. No pressure. There was no home opener in Week 1, and there won't be in Week 2, as the Packers travel south to take on the Atlanta Falcons and Arthur Smith's newfound weapon, Bijan Robinson. Week 3 will be the home opener, and they will host Derek Carr's New Orleans Saints. Not too tough of a schedule to start out the season for the new signal caller, Jordan Love. The Falcons finished last season with the 25th overall passing defense, the Bears 19th. However, the Saints finished second. But only 4 days after playing the Saints, the Packers will host the Lions on Thursday Night Football Week 4, in what will be a revenge game after the Lions denied the Packers a trip to the playoffs to end last season. Week 5, the Packers stay in prime time and play the Raiders on Monday Night Football. This matchup always reminds me of the famous Monday Night Football Packers-Raiders game when Favre lost his father in 2003, which was, by the way, the last time these teams met on Monday Night Football. The Packers hit an early bye with 2 weeks to prepare for traveling into Mile High Week 7 to play Sean Payton's Broncos. After a month without a home game, the Packers will welcome a divisional rival in the Minnesota Vikings, Week 8. Week 9, Green Bay will stay at home and welcome the LA Rams. The Rams and Packers have played each other 3 times in the last 2 seasons. The Rams have had a different quarterback each time: Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, and Baker Mayfield. Now the Packers are the team bringing a new person to the party. In Week 10, the Packers will hit the road to play the Steelers, and Mike Tomlin will hope the next Packer quarterback doesn't take another Lombardi from him. Getting late into November for Week 11, the Packers-Chargers game changes drastically, depending on who's hosting. This time it's the Packers with the advantage, and the fans will be hoping the frozen tundra can be frozen enough to perhaps slow down the quarterback responsible for the most passing yards through 3 seasons in NFL history. Week 12 is set to have NFC North implications when the Packers travel to Detroit in a rematch with the Lions, who will have their eyes set on winning a playoff game for the first time in what will be 33 years. Next, arguably the toughest game, Week 13, the Packers will host Patrick Mahomes in a Super Bowl I rematch. Then off to New Jersey to play the New York Giants. Brett Favre's last pass as a Packer was against the Giants, and I was at that NFC Championship game. I've always enjoyed this matchup. After week 4, tough games, after 4 tough games, and with 4 games remaining in the season, the Packers find some winnable games. At home to play the Baker Mayfield-led Bucks. Hitting the road in Week 16, they stay in the NFC and get a close look at the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft, Bryce Young. With the final 2 games, they will battle it out with fellow NFC divisional rivals. Week 7 at Minnesota on Sunday Night Football, and ending how we started, the Bears coming into Lambeau Field to end the regular season with a bang. So I'm basically going to be doing this for every team. So every 32 teams, I'm going through the schedule, and I'm going to hopefully take you on a little journey of what you are going to be experiencing this season. More than just saying Jets, Vikings, right? Bringing a little extra information about the games. I was thinking to myself, I don't remember the last time the Packers played the Raiders on Monday night. So I did a little research, and I was like, oh, that was the last time. So adding little tidbits of information, I think will be valued. And then after that, I'm going to have a short come up, and the short is going to be, Bill is in the chat, by the way. How's it going, Bill? He said, nice that Green Bay gets to book in the regular season with the Bears. I didn't know that. Yeah, and I thought when I was writing so this is the other part. I'm writing songs for every team. So I've been writing a song this entire day. They will be rap songs. I'm not a professional rapper, but I think that this is a really fun project, and I'm hoping that it will bring in some people to the channel. So basically how it's going to look is I'm going to post a short. I made a song today. It took about 7 hours. But the way it's going to work is I'm going to take, let's say the song is 2.5 minutes. Okay. I am going to build a video where it's going to be the song first, then it's going to go into your team's paragraph like that, and then it's going to go straight into the algorithm. The entirety of the video may be 10 minutes. Then I'm going to clip 60 seconds of the song, and I'm going to put it up as a short. The link to the full 10-minute video will be in the description of the short. So it'll say, like, if you enjoy this video, click here to see the entire rundown of the New York Giants, the Green Bay Packers. But I got to say, writing a rap song is something I've always enjoyed. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. I don't have the greatest rap voice, but I'm thinking that some of these might end up being bangers, maybe even ending up in some NFL locker rooms this offseason. I got pretty high hopes for this. So today, this is like today's just lyrics. So it basically kind of takes you on the same journey, but there's rhyming, and some things are a little bit different. I'll give you a couple lines. So Jordan Love's first games on the road against the Bears. Is this the beginning of Chicago's new nightmare? The Bears are rebuilding brick by brick, but the Packers lead the series 105, 95, and 6. The first opportunity in 32 years for the Bears to boast the best quarterback in Justin Fields. No home opener on the road for week 2. But the question is who? The Packers travel south to take on the Atlanta Falcons, a new offensive weapon, Bijan Robinson. So there's basically going to be, I'm just trying to have, a fun way for every team to kind of see, oh, wow, that's, that's a little deeper. Like for the people that maybe don't even keep up with football in the day-to-day, they might see the Falcons game and be like, that's boring. And then they hear somebody go, Bijan Robinson. And they're like, oh, yeah, that will be a fun game. trying to build some excitement here as we hit the off season. Um, there is plenty to be excited about. So there is going to be a news round off today, with some cuttings and signings. And then there's a little bit of drama going on in Cincinnati that we're going to go over. Jason Kelsey had some words to say about a fellow offensive lineman that we're going to talk about. And then we also are going to talk about divisional rankings, and that will pretty much be this episode. So I guess I'll start with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has, by the way, there's two Joe Burrow news. There's the one I'm about to talk about, but I will say the Bengals came out and said that the Bengals, or that Joe Burrow and the Bengals are getting closer on reaching an agreement, that the two parties are trying to come together and trying to make sure that the contract is beneficial for both teams. As we know, there is a business side of football where you want to make as much money as you can, but then there's also a side where, not everybody has this, but sometimes a quarterback cares more about his legacy than his money. So he will take a team friendly deal because, I got to imagine, and it's easy for me to say this because I'm not in their shoes, but I got to imagine that once you're at $150 million, 175 isn't that much more, but that could just be, my ignorance. But Joe Burrow is definitely a person that has made it pretty clear that he wants to be a part of good teams. And you look at the offense that he has in his team, unless he takes a team friendly deal, there's no way that they're going to keep all the dudes that they got on that team. They got the most ridiculous offense in the league, in my opinion. And now their defense is bolstered up. So, I'm not even including that defense that they got. A lot of young rookies, cornerback, safety, defensive end from the draft. So they're good there. But then there's going to be some other guys where a payday is coming up soon. So Joe Burrow, it's going to take some time for them to really figure it out because there's probably a lot of fine print in this contract in order to free up the necessary space for this team. But Joe Burrow went out today and said that he supports offensive tackle Jonah Williams after trade request. So the Bengals have had trade conversations centered around tackle Jonah Williams. He wanted to get a certain contract with a certain amount of money. The Bengals ended up signing Orlando Brown, and I'm sure Jonah Williams probably felt like that should have been his money because following that trade, following that signing, he requested a trade. The club said it has no plans to ship out the former first-round pick, but the situation remains unsolved after rumors and pre-draft trade talks. So the thing is I only care really about this for two reasons. One, because the Bengals re-amped up their offensive line last season, but then they got two injuries going into the playoffs before the postseason started last season. Talk about terrible timing. But the second reason I bring it up is because I'm trying to, read between the lines to try to see where Joe Burrow is at with his own contract negotiations. So, him supporting offensive tackle Jonah Williams, his word, his business is business. 3 words, I guess. But it just kind of shows you that I'm sure people have a line where they would like to be contract friendly and putting the team first. But there's probably a hard line where, some of these guys just feel disrespected. And, bringing in Orlando Brown from the Bengals point of view, it's one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. If you look at the numbers, he had like a 98% win rate against the pass last season. So, I understand it, but I understand it from that side too. And I think that's what Joe Burrow is saying. More exciting news, they did release quarterback divisional rankings. And I was excited to get your guys' opinion on this because the number one team that they're saying that has the best QB room is the AFC North. And when I went through it, I had some questions, okay? Because they're saying number one, obviously Baltimore, Lamar, Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, Cleveland, Deshaun Watson, and Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett. Now, I just want to say off the bat that I feel like Kenny Pickett is not playing at a high enough level at this point where we can consider, the division loaded. If you're going to say that this is the best QB division, you got to be like, you got to have a super loaded. To me, that is kind of what Mac Jones is to the New England Patriots, is Kenny Pickett. I know Kenny Pickett had that good game at the end of the season. He made some clutch throws, and people started looking at him different. But I look at the AFC West, and I see Josh Allen, Tua, who when Tua was playing good, I mean, a lot of people were saying that he was snubbed from the Pro Bowl last season. Not that he would have played, but we didn't know that he wouldn't have played at the time he was snubbed. Probably the biggest snub from the Pro Bowl last season was Christian McCaffrey. But then you got Aaron Rodgers now in that division. So if Tua Tagovailoa is let's say, a top 12 quarterback, Aaron Rodgers is, I think he's going to have a top 5 season this year. I definitely think him going to a team with a better defense and also a better offense is only going to do good things for him. He's going to have familiarity with Nathaniel Hackett. I know Nathaniel Hackett was a terrible head coach, but that was just a guy that was way outside of his comfort zone. He's back doing what he can do. And obviously he's really good at what he does, or he wouldn't have gotten that job. So I look at the AFC East and I'm like, damn, there's some good quarterbacks there. But then you got the AFC West. They got the AFC West at number 3. Russell Wilson is a confusing topic right now because I do feel like there is a part of everybody, because he's so cringe on the internet, that people just don't like. He's not a person that you want to like. Nobody really wants to be in his corner. Unless, for religious reasons, if you're a Christian, which I totally support. But when it comes to just like, the internet population, the memes, all that stuff, the corniness, the stuff that came out with his donation, his charity, where it was like one of the worst donations that was around, paying the people running it, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They said like 20 cents on every dollar was actually being donated. All of that stuff, I understand, but just to separate that and just talk about the football player, Russell Wilson, throw all that stuff away. Russell Wilson had probably the biggest drop off of any quarterback that I've ever experienced in my lifetime. And I know this because I was watching that Super Bowl 2013, the 43-8 Super Bowl. And Russell Wilson was good immediately. Remember when he was in preseason and they named him the starter? They had just paid their quarterback. I forget who it was at the time, but they just paid him a mega contract and then drafted Russell Wilson to be his backup and had to eat that contract because Russell Wilson was performing so well. Russell Wilson was good at what he did. And then Nathaniel Hackett tried to allow Russell Wilson to do things that he cannot do. And he basically got in his own way. He was I feel like his worst enemy. He wants to roll around. He wants to be a gunslinger. He's not. He can't even, see in the middle of the field that well because of his height. He's very good at, just if they got a run game, throwing the short passes. And then once in a while, when the defense comes up, he can hit that moon ball. And, he's got that. I'll give that to him. But he's really good at making it up as he goes. He's really good at playing backyard football. And I feel like he just got away from all that. And then it got to a point around week 5 where there was so much pressure that he wasn't performing that everything felt forced. Like you looked at the way we lost those games and it was like dropping a punt in overtime. It was just like, it felt like every play had so much pressure to get the Broncos on the right path that they just choked. And I don't know if Sean Payton coming in, I've already seen him implement things that are way different. No social media. Russell Wilson doesn't have a crew with him anymore. You don't get your own coaches. They're not even letting the Broncos wear their horse logo on their helmet. Everybody gets a piece of duct tape, and it's just the Sean Payton way. And if it works, everybody is going to say that it was all great. Um, so I'm kind of holding off on Russell Wilson. Like, as I'm a Broncos fan, and I'm trying to be non-biased here, but I just feel like because I've never seen a quarterback go from being a Hall of Famer, and I know his last season in Seattle wasn't great, and he had the pinky injury, but still, man, what we saw last year was literally the most difficult football to watch. I mean, the Thursday night game against the Colts, it was like no team wanted to win. It was like 6-9 in overtime. Gross. It was terrible. If Russell Wilson can get back to where he was, okay, then he could potentially be a 10-win quarterback. I totally do believe that. If he does do that, I think that this ranking will look way different next season. If Russell Wilson wins 10 games or more, next season they're going to go, Russell Wilson is, he's good again. Justin Herbert is insane. He's thrown for the most passing yards in his first 3 seasons as anybody. I know he choked in the playoffs, but Staley's not doing any favors to anybody. And I really think if Justin Herbert was under Andy Reid or someone like that, we would see potentially a Super Bowl already. I do think they have a coaching problem over there, and he had his ribs broken last season. He couldn't even throw more than 10 yards down the field for like the first half of the season. Really, Austin Eckler was carrying that team. But anyway, the weakest quarterback is either Russell Wilson or Jimmy Garoppolo. And if that was a fluke last season, Jimmy Garoppolo has gone to Super Bowls. Like, yeah, he doesn't win them, and yeah, his name doesn't jump off the page, but neither does Mac Jones or freaking Kenny Pickett. Like, I like Kenny Pickett. I think he's a really cool, chill dude. But to say the AFC North is number one, first off, Lamar, is he going to be able to stay healthy? Because no matter how much you like Lamar Jackson, and I like him as a player, and this is the thing, I think both things can be true. I like that he got his money, and I like that he did it his way, but at the same time, I don't think he was worth that much money. But I'm kind of torn with that, partially because I don't think that there's a better option. And if there's not a better option, then that's what he's worth, clearly. But I feel like Lamar he had that MVP season. If you look at the numbers, he didn't even throw the same amount of passing yards as Jalen Hurts threw last season. And Jalen Hurts wasn't an MVP. I feel like Lamar Jackson had that season that was insane because we never really seen a quarterback since Michael Vick run like that and just go on 90-yard runs. And I feel like it was really exciting and kind of new. And the NFL kind of went all in on that. And I was all in too. I mean, everybody loved Lamar then. But through the years and the injuries, I just don't feel the same way about Lamar. I still think, like, if you were going to say we'll trade Russell Wilson for Lamar today, I would do that immediately. But if they said that his contract was going to be, the amount of money that he ended up getting paid, I don't know about that, to be honest. And that is kind of why I'm torn. And then you got Deshaun Watson, who missed football for almost 2 years. And then he comes back last season and he is very mediocre. Looked a lot like Russell Wilson, in my opinion. Yeah, he still showed, flashes. Russell Wilson did that too. But overall, the Browns weren't winning. So who cares? And that's kind of the way being a quarterback is. Like, if you have flashes or glimpses, to a certain extent, like you get past due. Like, you could be a rookie and have glimpses, and we'll keep you even if you won 3 games the next year. But if you're a 5 to 7 year veteran and you're only showing flashes and glimpses, that's not going to cut it. Everybody, I mean, especially if you are the $240 million guaranteed man. So Deshaun Watson, to me, I mean, I do expect him. It's like Russell Wilson. Really, Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson, I put them in a total separate category of just IDK, circle it, highlight it, because um, you just don't really know yet. But so I go through this division and I'm like, Baltimore, Lamar. Okay, can you stay healthy? Deshaun Watson, who freaking knows? I mean, we'll see. Does he bounce back? Because you got to think about the mental stuff too. I'm sure if you go to the games, I haven't, but I'm sure if you go to these games that there's a lot of like, talking and a lot of chatter going on. And then Kenny Pickett is to me a 6 or a 7. He's not bad. Like, we'll give him another year. I kind of feel the same way about Daniel Jones. I'm actually a little higher on Daniel Jones than Kenny Pickett, to be honest. But like I said, the only guy in here that is you could even make an argument that he is, 1A, 1B is Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is the guy that is going. I mean, we have ourselves the new Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. And now the question is, we know who Tom Brady is, I guess. Take away playing styles, just talking about rings, it's Patrick Mahomes. But while we're sitting here going, Joe Burrow is Peyton Manning, then hold up, because Joe Burrow might be, and I hate over analyzing, like trying to compare the past, but it almost feels like, what if Joe Burrow's Ben Roethlisberger and Trevor Lawrence is Peyton Manning? I mean, think about it. Peyton Manning, John Elway, and Andrew Luck, the highest 3 graded quarterbacks ever from Mel Kiper going into the draft. And then Trevor Lawrence, number 4. So I do expect Trevor Lawrence to win Super Bowls. And I know that's crazy because it just feels weird because, it's Jacksonville. But at the same time, remember how we felt about the Bengals? People were telling Joe Burrow, like, they were telling him to do what John Elway did. Like, do not go to the Bengals. I remember Stephen A. Smith saying, everything that goes to the Bengals dies. Like, it's not fair to the player. And Joe Burrow was like, no, I'm going to make this place my home and make it better and raise the standard. And Aiden Hutchinson, if you watched Hard Knocks last year, said the same thing about Detroit. He's like, I don't really care about what people think about Detroit. Like, I'm here now and we're going to I like to win. That's what we're going to do. And I respect that about people. Jalen Ramsey did the opposite. When he was in Jacksonville, he just dipped out and was like, I'm out of here. I'm going to the Rams. And look at him just bouncing around, chasing rings. He's like the Kevin Durant of the NFL. So, okay, so number 2, I told you, is the AFC East. Number 3 is the AFC West. Okay, so first off, I do think AFC East is better because I think Tua showed that he is the 3rd best quarterback in that division. But no, I guess I'm torn with that one. Tyler Fink is in the chat, and he said, I have the Packers going 9-8 this year. We don't have that tough of a schedule. Yeah, I went through the Packers schedule, and I was actually listening to Tom Grassi when he did the schedule leak video before it came out. And I was listening to him, and I was like, I understand offseason optimism, right? And now I may be, as far as being balanced, I may be on like the wrong side where now I'm a pessimist and I don't even acknowledge things that look good anymore because I've been wrong so many times. So I consider myself balanced, but really I might just be a pessimist at this point, and just believe that nothing good will ever happen. But at the same time, like, we don't know who Jordan Love is. It's like, I was listening to Grassi like, oh yeah, this is not bad. I think we win 9 and I'm like, he's going through it and he's like, Denver, that's a win. And I'm like, Denver gave up like 16 points a game until they played the Rams on Christmas, way late in the season. And it was Denver and San Francisco. So if Sean Payton can get Denver to score 20 plus points a game, I don't think Denver is going to be a team that you can just look at and be like, oh, I saw them last year. They sucked. W. Like, and I'm not just saying that. Like, I don't know who Jordan Love is either. Like, I look at the Packer game and I don't go, easy dub, they don't have Rodgers. I think to myself, who the hell is this Jordan Love guy? All I know about him is that he came in during the Philly game on Sunday night last year and he looked really damn good. I mean, he looked like he belonged. And when you talk about quarterbacks, like the teams that spend, 7 years, 5 to 7 years trying to figure it out, right away. Like when Russell Wilson was in preseason, we knew. When Joe Burrow was throwing balls in LSU, like you knew. There's an argument that could be made that, and the great analogy is a movie. 20 minutes into the movie if you're watching a good movie or not. That happened to me yesterday. About 15 minutes into the movie, I was like, wow, this is a good movie. If you're an hour and a half into the movie and you're still deciding, you have your answer made for you. So I did think the little trailer that I saw of Jordan Love last year, very impressed. He was making a comeback against that Eagles team. I mean, I don't want to say Rodgers was doing good while he was in, but it didn't look like anything was missing when he wasn't. It's such a small sample size, but he was playing from behind. And when you're playing from behind, it kind of takes all the pressure off you because you know that if you lose, it's not really your fault. So I think he was playing super loose. That's what it looked like. And I just don't know if that's because he's poised and mature or if that is just because of the situation he was in. I will be much more interested to see how he handles the opening week playing the Bears in Chicago for, the first, because there's a lot of pressure on that game. Like the overall win loss on that is, I wrote it down. It's 100. It's 100 here. Let me get it really quick. So this is the overall win loss for the Packers Bears. It's 105. That's Green Bay. 95 the Bears, and 6. So the Bears are 10 wins behind Green Bay. But when you think about the last 32, 33 years, the Packers have dominated, which means before Brett Favre was a Packer, the Bears most likely had a pretty good lead on Green Bay. So you talk about 33 years of dominating a single team, which some people consider single-handedly the greatest rivalry in all of sports, not just the NFL, all of sports. Packers, Bears, historic, Mike Ditka. I mean, it goes way back. So I really think that even though it's just a Packers Bears game, it's kind of like we've officially turned a chapter and we're starting a brand new story. And the Bears have been looking at this game like this is their opportunity to be have the best quarterback in the division. They don't feel like Justin Fields can't be better than Kirk Cousins. I guarantee you that. And Jared Goff, he had a good season, but I bet you they think the ceiling's higher for Justin Fields. He almost broke Lamar Jackson's record. I think he did break the single game rushing record. He just needs to get better as a passer. He needs to get more comfortable in the pocket. But everyone still believes that he can make that step and be a top-notch quarterback. So I really feel like once Rodgers got traded, that there was this idea that it was the Bears' division to take now. We all think that Minnesota's going to fall back. They had a negative 3-point differential last season, and they they won 12 games. That will not happen again. It's never happened before. It probably won't happen again. And Detroit, they are the team that, there's a reason that they're opening up against Kansas City. There's a very good reason for that. And that's because everybody has the expectations that they are going to make a playoff push and maybe win their first playoff game in 33 years this season. Bills, and Tyler said, oh, yeah, did you see that Tom Grassi is going to all 32 NFL stadiums this year? And then Bill said 30 stadiums. SoFi Met are shared stadiums. Tyler goes, I forgot. And then Bill says all of sports, Yankees, Red Sox exist. Absolutely. And this isn't even my opinion. Just Google it. This is the world that we live in. This is what the people say. I'm sure some lists will have Red Sox, Yankees higher. But I've done it myself to see where the Broncos and Raiders rank. And I always see Packers, Bears, number one. But yeah, so there's just going to be a lot of pressure on that game. And it's funny that I didn't see that Tom Grassi was doing that, but I have already kind of planned the route I'm going to take. So I'm going to chill for week 1 and week 2. The Broncos open up against the Raiders and they play the Commanders. I'm not doing anything for those games. And then week 3, the Broncos go to Miami. I got family there, so I'm going to go to that game. And then the next week, they play Kansas City on Thursday night. I'm going to go to Kansas City. I've never been to a game in Arrowhead. And then I'm taking a bus from Kansas City to Denver because the next game is against the Packers. And then the game after that is the Chiefs again. So that's kind of the route I'm going this year. Super excited about it. And then there's another game that's going to be in Buffalo. I'm going to go to that game. Buffalo had tickets to their games for like $79. A Monday night football game against the Broncos. So if your team's playing Buffalo, check that out. So moving on with the QBs. So number 4 is the NFC North. Justin Fields, Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Kirk Cousins. This is what looks like right now the epitome of mid, right? It's like you look at this list and you're not mad about any of them, but none of them, are quarterbacks that you think will be in the Hall of Fame one day, as of right now. Now we'll see what happens. I do think Jared Goff doesn't get enough credit for the season he had last season, especially the fact that you saw Detroit drafted Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. I think Hendon Hooker might have been the best QB in the draft, but his injury definitely lowered his draft stock. So I think it's a smart draft, but I just felt like the Lions, I don't know, I felt a little disrespected for Jared Goff because if you're having a top 5 QB year, top 5, top 7, there's a lot of areas he was number 1 in, and your team's drafting a QB, it just almost feels like you just have this anti-Jared Goff barrier that you can't get over. Like I'll always just be Jared Goff. I'll never be Patrick Mahomes. And I kind of feel for him. Number 5 is the NFC East. And they got Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts, and Sam Howell. Sam Howell's definitely bringing the stock way down for you guys because you look at Jalen Hurts. I mean, he to me is, right up there with the best of them right now. And then Dak Prescott, yeah, he to me is like the Kirk Cousins. I just whatever. Like I'm sure he can win you some games. He can just do enough to leave you hanging on. Just enough for you to be like, yeah, we should keep him. He's like the Jay Cutler of the NFC before he went to the Bears. And Daniel Jones, I liked what I saw from him in the Minnesota game, but I don't know if I've seen enough to be like he's going to be top 10. But the thing is he might not have to be because we saw Eli Manning win Super Bowls with the Giants. You can make an argument that he was top 10, but he never had, the Mahomes, the Manning, the Tom Brady, he definitely should be a Hall of Famer in my opinion. But, there's just some of these other guys that really were like the all-time greats. And I wouldn't consider him there, but that's the point. You don't necessarily have to be. And I do think if you don't have that, you have to have a coach and the program needs to be run well. And the Brian Dabble and the Giants showed last year that they are being ran pretty well. So I do feel good about that. And Bill said the Grassi thing is huge fundraising event for St. Jude's. Tom isn't going during games. It starts May 30th at Green Bay. Oh, okay. I thought you meant like going to all the games. Yeah, we've never had the guy at QB before. But you know what I mean? You got more Super Bowls than many organizations. So does it even matter at the end of the day? And especially if two of those is beating, the greatest quarterback of all time, arguably, that kind of makes up for anything. You'll always have that. No one can take that from you. Number 6 is the NFC West. So there's only two divisions left after this. Kyler Murray, well, they put Kyler Murray / Colt McCoy. I don't know why they did that. Um, Honestly, you could make an argument that this division's ranked way too low. Not because of Kyler Murray, but we did see Kyler Murray. He was good enough to get his contract. He was also good enough to be drafted in the first round to play baseball and football. I don't like his attitude. I think there was a reason that film study was in the contract. You can read between the lines on that. But yeah, I have no idea why they slashed and put Colt McCoy. Oh, it's probably because Colt McCoy is going to start the season. Matthew Stafford won the Super Bowl 1 year ago, and he was hurt last season. So I don't think we can just throw him out. Like if you have to be at least 2 years removed from a Super Bowl in order to be thrown out. Like if Peyton Manning, as bad as he was when we won the Super Bowl, if he would have been like, I want to run this back, we would have been like, all right. Nobody was going to be like, no, dude, retire, you suck. So I do think we have to give him like one more year. If we see the same thing, he's just hurt, not the same, then yeah, he's not Matthew Stafford anymore. But this guy is the only, or the fastest first overall pick to reach 40,000 passing yards. A gunslinger, one of the top QBs in the league when he's playing at a high level. He's also probably the most injury-prone quarterback during his career than any quarterback in the league right now. I was looking at a list for fun because I saw a stat that Steph Curry was injured like 40% of his career up to this point. And I didn't know if that was an exaggeration or not, because you know how NBA debates are. People just throw things out there that make you have to look it up. And they were like, yeah, but nobody cares because he wins rings. But when people talk about, Anthony Davis, the guys that don't win rings, it's like, he's, the guy's glass, he'll break. Like, so I was looking at this list, and then there Matthew Stafford was like the highest ranked NFL player. And it listed his injuries, and it was like, yeah, that's a guy that is injured very, very often. And that I think next you have Brock Purdy, and like I just don't get it yet, guys. I just don't. I just don't know how a guy that this is not a small sample size anymore. Like he came in week 12 against the Dolphins in the first quarter, and from week 12 to week 18, they had no bye week, and Brock Purdy scored more points per game than the number one offense, who was the number one offense, the Chiefs. And they had the highest point differential of any team in the league last season, which means they blew everybody out. And Brock Purdy has yet to lose a game that he doesn't break his elbow in. And the fact that I'm hearing all these conversations about like who are the 49ers, like who should they play, like Trey Lance, is like why are we having this talk? Like if Brock Purdy looked like, if he was built like Jalen Hurts, like just raw strength, or played that style, but had the same results as far as like the end of the game score, nobody would be like, what do we do with him? So I really do feel like it's because he is, Mr. Irrelevant. He was the last pick in the NFL draft. A lot of people probably attribute his success to Mike Shanahan, or no, that's his father, Kyle Shanahan. And at the end of the day, it's like, who cares who gets the credit? Like, if you're winning your games by 20 or more points on a weekly basis, I don't really care how you do it. I don't care if you, run the Wildcat the entire game. Like, you're winning. That is the only thing that matters. And Brock Purdy has shown that he can win. We don't know what Trey Lance is, right? Because he didn't play the whole season. He was drafted, and then the following year he finally is going to get the start, and Jimmy Garoppolo is getting the boot. And his first game is a total tornado in Chicago that ended with Justin Fields doing a super epic slip and slide through the field to celebrate their win. But we couldn't measure anybody in that game. That was such a sloppy and ugly game. And then week 2 he gets injured, for the entire season. And Brock Purdy wasn't even the second choice. They went with Jimmy Garoppolo, and he started the first game against the Broncos on Sunday night. And, he ends up getting hurt. And then in comes Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy did something that Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't do. Like, if it's Mike Shanahan, then why is Jimmy G not doing the same thing? And then I went through, because a lot of people were like, well, maybe it's the talent on the team. And I went through, and I have it in an old notebook, last season's notebook, the list of quarterbacks to come in as backups and not do what Brock Purdy did. And it's all of them. So Brock Purdy, to me, the fact that we're still like having a debate about a guy that did what he did with, it's not like Tom Brady's on the roster. You know what I'm saying? We're having this debate about a guy that we just don't know. So let's choose the one that we do know. I think the only thing that makes it complicated is the compensation that they had to give to get Trey Lance. But you know what? That's the way it is. You win some, you lose some. You still have arguably one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. You have a super physical team. By the way, I was making this note, and this took a long time, so I really hope you guys appreciate this. I made this whole thing. I'm going to add it to strength of schedule because I wanted to accommodate or reflect the physicality of the team that they played the week prior. So if the New York Giants played the San Francisco 49ers on week 10, week 11, I expect them to be a little beat up. I expect them not to be 100%. And that is something that I want to add into my algorithm that I've created for the strength of schedule. So I went through every team. I still have a couple teams to go. I just try to use this mouse for this computer. I'm an idiot. And I went through and looked at the NFC East for you, Bill. And I thought this was interesting. Okay. So the Eagles. So basically, if it's not clear, how it works is week 1, the Eagles played Detroit. So it starts week 2, and I'm looking at who Detroit played, and it continues. The Eagles' opponents were 7-7 after playing the Eagles. Okay, that's 500. And the Eagles are considered by most people that I talk to the most physical team in the league. They're, that offensive line just kind of really sets the tone, and it's the identity of that Philly team. And then the Commanders, guess what they were? 7-7. And then the Dallas Cowboys were 6-7-1. There was a tie. And the New York Giants were 8-6. So the Giants had actually the best record. So I heard on a sports talk radio that they were like, the San Francisco 49ers are so physical. I mean, it's ridiculous. Their opponents went 0-16 last season after playing the 49ers because they were beat up. They're extremely physical. So I looked up that that if Kyle Shanahan ever addressed this, and Kyle Shanahan was like, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's not. We are going to, think that it's not because, we play a tough style of football. He was like humble about it, but he's also like, we're going to side with the fact that it's not a coincidence. And I was like, sweet. I mean, I hope it's not because it is, it's just another tool to have in my toolbox when I'm trying to talk about the schedule. If it's a coincidence, it's no good. Flukes don't really work when trying to implement constants. I don't need variables. So the thing is, though, San Francisco was 0-16, and all these teams were 7-7, 7-7, and 8-6 in 6-7-1. I mean, I have to do the other team still. It took a while, but um, I got to say, after doing that, I'm not sure yet. I would be curious to get your opinion on if you think that it is a fluke. I think it's probably a little bit of both, which makes it really hard to measure. 0-16, that is like, I mean, that at that point, I feel like anytime it's 100% either one or the other way, there is always a little bit of, the ball bouncing your way happening. Whether you're a team going 16-0 or your opponents are going 0-16, I mean, anything that extreme. But is there something else in here that is important? Like, if are you physical enough to actually affect your opponent the next week? I think the most important thing, and I'm still deciding, if I do add this, it'll have to be a low score. I don't want it to affect the algorithm in a big way, but I do think the biggest the biggest constants that affect a team week to week is where they're traveling, how long they've been traveling. The algorithm I did showed that the Giants, so far, all the teams I've done, the Giants have the toughest schedule. The Giants aren't even in the top 5 if you look at strength of schedule. And if this is your first time hearing me talk about this, strength of schedule, total trash. You can throw it away. I uploaded a short. Actually, I put it on a Facebook reel. I'll upload it tonight. But 2 days after I was saying this, throw it away, because what did they do? The NFL takes the wins and losses from the previous year and they add them all up. And they're like, this team won 7 games. This team won 13 games. You're harder. Total ridiculous. It is ridiculous that we're living in an area of time that people get paid millions of dollars and all they do is talk about football. It's like, we're not just talking about it. Like, if all I did was no research and all I did was turn the camera on and start going through NFL.com, I could talk about football, but I wouldn't be providing new information. I would just be another way for you to hear Sports Center. Okay. And if that's the case, then just watch Sports Center, because they have better cameras and audio and everything. They have a whole studio. The way I'm trying to give something different to the people, that you can't just get from a talking head, a real breakdown of this stuff. So the algorithm I created, Bill was in here with me, and he was saying, like, I think that this algorithm, if it works, it'll be huge. Or Jinja commented on the video and said that too. And so far, I got to say, the algorithm has been very accurate for me, and it's been working really well. And I'm going to post every single team's actual strength of schedule. Like, a lot of people didn't realize that the Giants were flying 28 hours of flight time. I mean, just take a second and think about how long that is. And I'll put it into perspective here. The Packers, or the Giants, I mean, are 28 hours and 32 minutes. They got a 5-hour flight to Arizona. They got a 6-hour flight to San Francisco, a 5.5 hour to Las Vegas. This is a team that is going into the West Coast and then coming back and then going to the West Coast, or they're going to the West Coast, staying away from their family for 6 days, and then going from Vegas to San Francisco. I believe they got Vegas and San Francisco back to back. Ridiculous. All right. And then you look at a team like the Colts, and it definitely benefited them being in the middle of the country. They got like a couple of games where I don't even think they're going to fly to. They got a 42-minute flight to Cincinnati from Indianapolis. You might as well just push the plane down the highway. And then an hour and a half to Atlanta, 2 hours to New England, 1 hour to Nashville, 1.5 hours to Charlotte, 1.5 hours to Baltimore. Their longest flight is 2 hours, 2.5 hours to Houston. That is the Colts' hardest flight. And for their actual longest, the games that would be their long flights, those teams are coming in. Like, they have games against the Rams, the Tampa Bay Bucks, and the Las Vegas Raiders. Those are all home games for Indy. That makes a huge difference. Steve is in the chat, by the way. Actually, I missed a couple of these. Steve said, "What's up, Bill?" And then Steve said, "I'd just consider Purdy has that number 1 overall pick instead of Lance. Flip flop them. And Konnichiwa, good to have you back in here, Steve. And Steve said, "You don't want our opinion, Kyle, because it will always be a better opinion than yours every time. Just face it, my friend." Dude, shots fired right out of the gate. And let me see. And then Steve said, "I just consider Purdy has that number 1 overall pick instead of Lance. Flip flop him." That's what I would do too. That's what I would do too. Like you came up. You know what I mean? Like don't be mad about it. Like if you go to Goodwill or the thrift shop and you see, a pair of Gucci glasses that are real and authentic for whatever reason, they're in there for $10, and you got a pair of Ray-Bans that are at home, and you're like, "Oh, I feel like I need to wear these because I paid 200 for these. I only paid 15 for these." It's like, no, wear the ones that are worth the most. Who cares where you got it? How about this? Wear the ones you like the most. Um, and I feel like that's what they needed. They just need to accept the fact that Brock Purdy was not their first option, and he's kind of their saving grace at this point. So, um, but yeah, so the Colts have it super easy, and then you look at um, the other team I did was the Eagles because it said the Eagles had the hardest schedule. So I wanted to do the Eagles to try to, figure out like where the Eagles really land. And the Eagles scored 206 points. And I have the episode before this, how I explain how the points work. But basically, they have 24 hours of flying, which is a good amount of flying, but it's also 4 hours less than the Giants. So, um, and the way I did it was if you're flying through one time zone, I multiply it by 2, the amount of flight hours. If you fly through 2 time zones, I multiply it by 3. If you go to the east to the west coast, I multiplied it by 4. But you have to fly at least 2 hours for every time zone to get credit for that time zone. Like Denver has a flight to Detroit, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, but they're going through 2 time zones. I'm not going to multiply that times 3 because it doesn't, accurately reflect the difficulty of that flight. So, and then I'm trying to think if there's any other thing. And then if you play back-to-back away games, I add 2 points. If it's back-to-back, if it's back-to-back-to-back, I add 3. If you're playing a team coming off of a bye, I add 2. If you're coming off a bye, then I subtract 2 because that helps you. And there are teams like the Rams. I'm telling you right now, the Rams, they're not on anybody's strength of schedule at number 1. It's the Patriots and it's the Eagles. The Rams have the hardest schedule probably in the NFL. They have games where they're going to the East Coast twice, or they might as well stay because it's like East Coast, and then they play on Thursday night against Indy. So you might as well just stay there because otherwise you're just going to fly back in 3 days and you're switching time zones. I think it's like 3 of their first 4 of their first 5 are on the road. And then they end the season with like 3 of 4 on the road. And then they also play like 6 teams coming off of a bye. The Colts don't even have one game where they play a single team that's coming off of a bye. I find that very, very interesting. So the reason this is so important is because let's say that you were trying to make a bet. Let's say you were trying to figure out if you should take the over-under, because the way the NFL does it, you're kind of screwed because what they do is they make you go all in on the bad teams, and you have to say that, the worst teams are Houston and the Cardinals this year, and they're at 5.5. So you have to say those teams are going to win 6 games, if you want to take the over. That's a lot of games, right? And if you take the under, it's like, damn, we really can't have them winning any games. And then your ceiling for the best team, San Francisco and Kansas City, is 11.5. So what they've done is they've made you go all in on bad teams, and they've made you like go, way all in on the good teams because the window's about this big. But when the season ends, like every season, it's actually like this, right? You have a floor, and that's a team that won 1 to 2 games. It happens every year pretty much. And then you have a team like the Eagles last year who dominated, right? So what they do is they make this tiny window. So instead of counting last year's wins and losses, what I did is I went on DraftKings and I started. This was my base starting point. I look at your opponent and I see what's their over under for this season, because this season matters. I don't care what you did last season. The Jaguars will win more games this season. The Jets will win more games this season. The Vikings will not win as many games this season as they won last year. The Packers probably might end up somewhere around the same. But it's like every team's 8.5, 7.5. So if all I did was count, the over under for every team that you play, all the teams would be so similar. It would be the worst strength of schedule. It would be like, oh, 145 is your total, 147 is your total. This guy got 150. It's like, I want to see some real separation here. I want there to be a way for those 28 hours of flying to pop on the paper. For you doing, double turns to the West Coast, to the East Coast twice in 10 days. We need that stuff to pop on the paper. So that is kind of why I'm doing this. But if you're trying to pick an over under, especially like the Colts, like even if you thought to yourself, look, the Colts were absolutely trashed last season. I don't think that they're going to win a ton of games this year. Once like really dissect the schedule, you're like, yeah, they might be able to win a couple of these. They might win with a schedule that easy. They could win 6 games. It's totally possible that the Colts could end up with 6, 7 wins because of the type of schedule they have. And then you look at the Giants and some of the games that just don't pop on the paper, you look at differently. And a perfect example of that is the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a game on what week is it? This is week 18. No, that's Denver. Eagles are towards the top. They have a game against Seattle. And the way that it's actually set up is very, very difficult. And you wouldn't think, oh, Seattle is going to be, one of the games that they're going to slip up on. But the way the schedule is actually out, it's here it is. They play San Francisco, okay? And then they play San Francisco, Kansas City, and Seattle together. Could you even like wrap your head around how difficult that might be? So this is what I said. Look, they're playing the Jets October 15th. Okay. But then they're playing Miami. Okay. Those are 2 tough games. We can agree on that. The Commanders, I would say it's a super easy game, but we know the Commanders, they got them last year. And I think what the Commanders did last year, it's a trap game. Seattle might do it. What made last season interesting was the Eagles were coming off of a bye week. So just when you thought that you had, a constant that coming off a bye week isn't overall good, you saw the Eagles come out of bye week and drop one to the Commanders, who were not an impressive team last year. So then they play the Cowboys. Okay, then they hit their bye week. Okay, they play the Chiefs week 11, but here's the thing. The Chiefs have a bye week 10, so they're both coming off of a bye week. That's good. Then they play Buffalo. Like, this is ridiculous. Look at this stretch of games. Kansas City, then they play Buffalo. Then the next week, they've already had their bye week, so no bye week. The next week, they play San Francisco, one of the most physical teams in the league. Then, week 14, they play at Dallas Cowboys. It's like, geez, Dallas Cowboys aren't great, but after playing the Chiefs and the Bills and the Niners, like, can you throw in the Cardinals in that spot? No. At Dallas, and it's going to be Sunday Night Football. So this is the trap game right here. The week after, at Seattle. They've just, I think they do win most of these games. I do. Kansas City, I think they could beat. Buffalo and San Francisco, they're super tough games, but guess what? They're in Philly. That helps Philly. It's harder for the 49ers to fly from California to Philly, than it is for Philly to just show up. So, but they are going to be beat up. And then they go to Dallas, and then they got to fly to Seattle. That is all the way across the country. And you're talking back-to-back away games after that stretch. That's a trap game right there. And I would bet you anything that Philly is going to be favored to win this game probably by 7 points, especially if they've already beaten Buffalo and San Francisco in the Cowboys. If they come in here rolling on a 3 or 4 game win streak, they're going to be favorites at this game. And this is a sneaky tough game. Bill said, or Steve said, I don't have a favorite team, Bill. I just have players I enjoy watching. Been that way since I started watching the NFL with my dad. That's kind of how I am with basketball. Like, I've been to a lot of Miami Heat games, so I'm a Heat fan, but at the same time, I'm a Denver Broncos fan, so I always cheer for the Nuggets. And then I've always, for Kobe, really appreciated the Lakers. And it's funny, I was telling my girlfriend, this is the first year that I've gotten to a point where, unless Boston beats the Heat, like I'm gonna be happy no matter what, because of the way, the remaining teams. The only thing I would change is that the Milwaukee Bucks would win it all. Steve said, I think it's because my mom and dad enjoyed every game that was televised the whole season. They didn't care who it was. They both just enjoyed the game overall. And that's kind of just pure passion for the sport. Sometimes my girlfriend would just be like, why are you watching? Oh, you like these teams? And no, not at all. I love football. I do not like the Chicago Commanders who came on Thursday night. Nope, but I love football so much that I will suffer through this game. And that is just the kind of way it rolls, especially when you've been deprived as long as we have. Like, man, I was trying to find a way to stream the XFL last week. Like, you guys might need to like call a helpline for me. Like, I'm like going through it right now. I was talking about the offensive line for Kansas City. Jason Kelce believes the Eagles lost one of the best guards in the NFL in Isaac Samulo. By the way, Jason Kelce, if you haven't seen their podcast, Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce, it's actually really great stuff. They were doing an episode where they had Andy Reid on, and Andy Reid like mentions that he was super nervous, because he's like he said, I don't really do these things, but I'll do it for you. And then you could just see by his demeanor that he's just a quiet guy. He doesn't like being on camera. He doesn't like being in the spotlight. But he was just doing it, to support their channel. It was very wholesome, and it was a great video. And they talked a little bit about the Super Bowl, and Jason Kelce had to sit there and listen to them talk about it. But it was a lot of like inside information about getting drafted, and Andy Reid talking to Travis Kelce for the first time in the locker room at where did he go? Cincinnati. Same place Derek Wolf went, who signed that football. Derek Wolf, that dude's a dog. So I'll go through the news roundup really quick. The Jaguars, you know what? Screw this. None of these are interesting. I'll tell you, Josh Downs, a 3rd-round pick for the Colts, signed his rookie contract. And then we can move on to the last thing I wanted to do. The ESPN did ESPN did a power ranking post draft, and I wanted to go through it really quick. So this is the newest power rankings with analysis from NFL Nation reporters on which position of area their team has improved the most since the 2022 season ended. So this is the Super Bowl to now. This is the most current list, okay? They say Kansas City, they've most improved at the edge position. The Chiefs replace veterans at or near the ends of their respective careers, Frank Clark and Carlos Dunlap, with 2 much younger players, free agents Charles Omenihu, a first-round draft pick, and first-round draft pick Felix Azuma, who have big potential. And that was the last pick in the first round. So I thought the last pick in the first round. That is the last pick in the first round. So they said the Chiefs. I got to go Bengals. And they do have the Bengals here at number 2, so it's not like they're way off. But I mean, you could make an argument that the Eagles too, man. Look at what the Eagles just did. Like, holy crap. Post free agent ranking 2, they're staying at 2, so they haven't moved up or down. Most improved on the offensive tackle. Massive splash by signing Orlando Brown and its new left tackle. Last season with Kansas City, Brown was 18th in run block win rate. According to ESPN Analytics, when Jonah Williams was healthy in 2021, he was among 50 among 68 qualifying players. The Eagles are at number 3. They've most improved at the cornerback position. And I did not hear that, Bill. Pat McAfee was signed by ESPN. I thought that he just went on a rant that he can't be bought recently. I am so shocked. I am so shocked about this. I guess it wasn't working out with FanDuel. Pat McAfee joining ESPN in multi-million-dollar blockbuster. Oh, I feel like he's going to sell out. He's moving. Oh, the Pat McAfee show is moving to ESPN. Wow. In the process, it appears McAfee will walk away from his 4-year, $120 million contract. He is in the second year of the agreement. The amount ESPN will pay is not fully known, but it is more than 8 figures per year. Jesus, how many figures is that? In the 10 millions per year? Jeez, that is crazy. I wonder if they're going to have to change where the studio is or anything like that. Steve said, I can't imagine being a one-team only fan and look back and realize I missed so many games of bad teams with players like Barry Sanders, Derek Thomas, Chris Carter, and Hines Ward. Yeah, and there's been some great teams, unfortunately, that just haven't been able to get themselves on a winning team. And you kind of feel bad when they retire. Champ Bailey never got a ring, unfortunately. So, man, that is mind-blowing. I'll dive into the Pat McAfee thing after this. So, the 49ers are 5. They're saying they most improved at defensive tackle. The 49ers had one of the least productive defensive tackle groups in the NFL in 22. They generated a combined 59 pressures, 4th fewest in the league. Eric Armstead, who missed 8 games with a foot and ankle issue, had the most pressures among Niners defensive tackles with 14. Enter big ticket free agent Javon Hargrave, who accounted for 53 pressures and 9 sacks last season with a 14% pressure rate, the best in the NFL among tackles with at least 500 pass rushes over the past 2 seasons. The Niners are counting on Hargrave to elevate their defensive line back to 2019 level of dominance. Damn. I'm glad I'm reading this because that was one that kind of blew past me. The Miami Dolphins, number 6, most improved. Wow, they said defense. They don't even have a position here. They added Jalen Ramsey. They added the best defensive coordinator in the league in Vic Fangio, in my opinion. They added linebacker David Long, who could prove to be an under-the-radar signing of the year if he helps solidify the middle of the Dolphins' defense. Miami could push for a top 10 production on both sides of the ball. Miami will have a top 10 defense this year. Mark it. Dallas Cowboys, number 7. They've improved on the defensive line. They've added Brandon Cooks. They selected Mozzie Smith in the first round. A lot of people thought Mozzie Smith was taken too high and that they overreached for him. After looking at Mozzie Smith, I did a deep dive into him and spent like 30 minutes on this guy. Mozzie Smith is actually, I don't believe he's an overreach. He has, he's probably the safest pick in the draft when you look at what he does. And I think the comparison that was made was Luke Kuechly. Not quite Luke Kuechly, but, very comparable, right under. He's going to be the real deal. He will be great immediately. He will be like when the Broncos got Surtain, or when the Cowboys got Micah Parsons. It'll be a very noticeable draft pick. So they kept core pass rushers Micah Parsons, who, by the way, I don't know if you heard, Micah Parsons is turning into a defensive end or an edge rusher. So he was technically a linebacker. So he's moving positions. He's like changing his weight. It's a whole thing because the money is way different. People are paying top dollars for edge rushers, not so much for a linebacker. So in quest to get as much money as possible, Micah Parsons switching his position. They still have Demarcus Lawrence, Sam Williams. They should have a good defense. They've kept the defensive coordinator, God, what's his name, Dan Quinn, and Dan Quinn, one of the best defensive coaches in the league. Baltimore most improved at wide receiver, Odell Beckham, Nelson Aguilar, and Zay Flowers. This is the best wide receiver group that the Ravens have ever had. Number 9, the Chargers. They're at number 9. I just can't believe that. How are the Chargers at number 9 over the Jaguars? The Chargers most improved at wide receiver. They have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, but personally, they get hurt a lot. And then they drafted Quentin Johnson. And Quentin Johnson, he fell for a reason. I'm not too high on Quentin Johnson. If you actually look at his tape, not just his highlights, but his tape, he doesn't really know how to use his body. Like he doesn't meet the ball at, it's he lets the ball come to him. He doesn't extend. He's got the wingspan to just, get up there and win those 50-50 balls. And you see a lot of times that he just lets the ball come to him. He's very passive. He's a very passive receiver. And it doesn't really make sense because he's such a big receiver, but he just hasn't figured out, I feel like, how to really dominate that position. Like some of the big receivers like Calvin Johnson's, Demaryius Thomas, the Brandon Marshalls. He just doesn't have that aggressiveness yet. So I just think there's a lot of hype around him. But if you watch on ESPN, Steve Smith, the Hall of Fame wide receiver from the Panthers, he breaks down every receiver worth breaking down. And he said all of this. That's where I watched him watch the tape. I didn't watch the tape myself, but I watched him watch the tape, and I could see from playing high school football and remembering, what the coaches say, I knew exactly what he was saying. It was very easy for, someone to understand. And I could see a lot of flaws in that guy. But he still has the potential to be great. Number 10 is Jacksonville. They got Calvin Ridley, who I'm telling you right now, Calvin Ridley is going to have a 1,500-yard receiving season. Calvin Ridley, when he was 2 years ago, Calvin Ridley with Julio Jones. Calvin Ridley is one of the best route runners in the NFL. He's a product of Alabama. He's just nasty. He's great. And I do think if you've been watching him, he's been working out. He's in great football shape. I think he's going to have like a top 10 campaign. I think Calvin Ridley is a sneaky fantasy if you play fantasy football. Not sneaky in the way where it's the 4th round and you pick him. But if you're in the 3rd round and he's still there, or the 4th round and he's still there, like I would take him, because I think there's going to be, because there's always leagues that just don't know what they're doing. There's going to be leagues where he falls to like the 5th, 6th round. It's going to be ridiculous how good he's going to be this year. Steve said, or Bill said, Micah Parsons was at the NBA game tonight in a Celtics jersey. Just some useless trivia. I would be at the NBA game. I was watching the Lakers game 2 days ago against the Warriors, the last game. And it was like Bad Bunny and Kim Kardashian. And I'm like, they literally just go to these games as like a social event. They're just all hanging out. It's like ridiculous. It's funny because you get all the rich celebrities on the floor, and then you got all the actual passionate fans in the nosebleeds. Because if you're going to a game and you would sit in the nosebleeds, you're a diehard. And I would totally be behind, like, once every like 5 years. They're like, seat swap. The people on the floor have to go to the nosebleed. People on the nosebleeds have to go down. We do this once every 5 years. You were the chosen ones, and we give all those diehard fans an opportunity to be on the floor. That'd be cool. It's like the Super Bowl. It's like only rich people can afford to go to the Super Bowl. It's like not even for, your average diehard fan can afford a Super Bowl ticket. Then you got the Seahawks at 11. They've improved their secondary. Devin Weatherspoon was the number 1 corner in the draft. They got him at number 5 overall. They also got the best receiver in the draft, in JXN. The Jets are number 12, most improved. Go figure. Quarterback. Aaron Rodgers. He upgrades the position in every way imaginable. Zach Wilson is probably not a future Hall of Famer if I had to guess right now. But it's, maybe he'll get another chance. Maybe he won't. He'll definitely get a chance with someone's mom. Number 13, the Detroit Lions, they have improved their secondary. They got Cameron Sutton. They got Emmanuel Mosley, former Philadelphia Eagles safety CJ Gardner-Johnson, second-round draft pick Brian Branch from Alabama. Detroit secondary was a glaring weakness last year. Yeah, they were the worst passing defense in the league. So they needed to upgrade in a major way, and that's what they did. And to think that the Lions were able to actually win games last season, when you saw that stretch where they won like 6 of the final 7 games, their defense was playing for points given up per game. They went to 15. They were at 32, and they were losing every game 45-48. They were losing shootouts. The defense came up to level 15. Detroit won 7 or 6 of their last 7 or 7 of their last 8. The fact that Detroit's actually made some like permanent changes in that secondary, I feel like this Lions team might have a ceiling pretty high this year. Minnesota improved at defensive coordinator. Obviously, they got Brian Flores, and he's going to replace Ed Donato. And much needed. The Vikings defense was absolutely garbage last season. And Steve said, "I dare you, Kyle, to tell Jack Nicholson he has to swap seats with the bleacher seat." I mean, I didn't say I was going to tell him. I said the stadium's going to tell him. I'm not going to tell him. I can't afford to go. I'm going to be watching on TV. I'll just see all these little guys getting out of their seat and swapping. Number 15, the Steelers. They've improved their O-line. Georgia offensive tackle Broderick Jones in the first round. The Steelers had a very, very, very good draft, by the way. And they're definitely going to be better this year. It might just be 1 or 2 games, but they'll be better. The Patriots, 16. They were at 17. Most improved offensive coaching. Belichick's plan to install a new offense in 22, and to do so with longtime defensive base coach Matt Patricia is a leading presence. So now they got Bill O'Brien, and they got a new offensive line coach, and hopefully they can get Mac Jones some help, because he was trying to call people in the locker room and got caught like a little kid. Bill Belichick, I feel like he's like the epitome of a micromanager. And then he just like shrugs it off, calling it the Patriot way. I keep doing week. Number 17, the New York Giants, most improved receiver. I don't mean just wide receiver. I'm also talking about tight end. The Giants greatly improved the receiving core with the addition of Darren Waller at tight end, Paris Campbell, Jamison Crowder, and Jalen Hyatt. That is at least 4 new options for Daniel Jones, assuming Crowder or Jeff Smith make the final roster. This is definitely an upgrade in speed and explosiveness compared to what they had last season, when they had the fewest 20-plus yard receptions. Cleveland, number 18, wide receiver. They have devoted much of this offseason to upgrading around franchise quarterback Deshaun Watson. They got speedy slot receiver Elijah Moore. Then they used their highest remaining pick in the draft on third-round wideout Cedric Tillman. Cleveland also signed Marquise Goodwin in free agency. The Browns struggled to find consistency at receiver in 22, but Watson's receiving corps should be much deeper. And of course, they still have Amari Cooper, who is consistently getting over 1,000 yards each year. The Raiders, most improved at pass rush, adding Tyree Wilson, who had 7 sacks in each year his past 2 seasons at Texas Tech. They still have Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. They should have a pretty good solid front. And it says a disruptive pass rush for a division that features Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. And then it says and Russell Wilson, but it's not highlighted like Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. The Packers, most improved, nowhere. I didn't even know that was an option. This is an all-out rebuild. Regardless of what the Packers want to call it, it doesn't mean they won't be better at some spots by the end of the season. But you can't be better right now at quarterback going from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, or at receiver after losing Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, or at tight end after losing Robert Tonyan and Mercedes Lewis. Even on defense, the addition of first-round pick Lucas Van Ness makes the Packers better at that spot only if Rashawn Gary comes back from his ACL. And that date is still TBD. Wow. So, I mean, yikes. The New Orleans Saints, number 21, most improved at quarterback, obviously getting Derek Carr. The Panthers, 22, most improved at quarterback. The Panthers finished near the bottom in total QBR the past 2 seasons. Bryce Young hasn't played an NFL down yet, but he has had a total of a QBR of 30.1 in the past 2 seasons when pressured. That compares to what Mahomes, Burrow, and Lawrence did in college. He ranked first in passing yards, touchdowns, completions of 20 yards, and his QBR was 89.9 when blitzed. Unless Young is a bust, he can't help but be a major upgrade. Number 23, the Broncos, offensive line. We could say coaching is most improved, but the jury remains out on Sean Payton and the new staff until games are played. On the field, the Broncos handed out 2 of the league's biggest contracts to players who changed teams on the offensive line. Mike McGlinchey signed a 5-year, $87 million, and guard Ben Powers received a 4-year, $51 million deal for a team that averaged a league-worst 16.9 points and had quarterback Russell Wilson sacked a career-high 55 times. Any improvement up front will be necessary if the Broncos are going to have any chance to fully benefit from the trade for Wilson or end the team's 7-year playoff drought. The Commanders, I hated reading that, by the way. Bill said Jack would do it for Make-A-Wish. Wait, it is Jack Nicholson, so maybe not. Oh, man. I was actually, this is total sidebar, but I Googled like best actors in the world, and a lot of lists had Jack Nicholson at number 1. And I was like, man, my generation hasn't had a ton of Jack Nicholson movies. I did see that one that he did with who's the guy that plays God in Bruce Almighty. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. God, I can't remember. But anyway, he has a movie with him where they're dying and they end up doing, it's called Bucket List. That's what it is. And that was like really some of the only movies. So I started, renting some older movies. And the other day I ended up just like bawling my eyes out watching One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. An incredible, incredible movie that totally like made me appreciate Jack Nicholson so much. And now I've been just going through and watching all of his movies. It's been Morgan Freeman. Thank you. I don't know why I've never ever forgotten his name, and then I do it here. And then getting towards the end, the Rams are at 25. They were 25 when the season ended, so they're staying at 25. Most improved backup quarterback. It's, they got Stenson Bennett in the 4th round, but I would think that any time you're most improved at a position that you hope you never need, it's not too exciting. Number 26, the Falcons. They're saying their defense, they got Jesse Bates the third, cornerback Jeff Okuda in the secondary, Calais Campbell, David Anatmente to edge rusher Bud Dupree, linebacker Kendrick Ellis. These additions would help the team's pass coverage, which could also lead to more sacks. The Bears at 27, most improved at wide receiver. Obviously, they traded received DJ Moore for their first overall pick to Carolina. They still have Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool, St. Brown. His brother plays for Detroit. Amon St. Brown. This is his brother, Equanimus St. Brown. And rookie Tyler Scott. And then to end it off, we have Tennessee, who upgraded at offensive line. The Colts upgrading at quarterback with Anthony Richardson. The Bucs, most improved, the future. Much like the Packers, it's unrealistic for the Bucs to get better immediately after losing one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But they made some intriguing moves, like bringing in Baker Mayfield to compete with Kyle Trask. And they hired a longtime Pete Carroll assistant and offensive coordinator in Dane Canales, and a highly respected defensive mind. And aside from not getting an offensive tackle in the draft, they made really solid selections top to bottom. 23 won't be the year, but these players can grow into the roles and have success down the road. And yeah, Tampa might just be trying to get, a quarterback out of USC next year. And then Houston, number 31, most improved at defensive line. They added Will Anderson Jr., number 3 overall, right after picking C.J. Stroud. And they added Sheldon Rankins. Last season, the New York Jets run defense allowed 3.82 yards per carry, compared to 4.13 without Rankins. Anderson had 34 sacks in his 3 years at Alabama. So you got a pass rusher and a guy that's going to help stop the run for the Texans. And then the worst team in the free agent period, as of right now, the Arizona Cardinals. Most improved at cornerback, but cornerback was just one of the many positions the Cardinals had to address this offseason. And like some of the others, they did. Arizona signed new corners Rashawn Fenton and Chris Boyd, and drafted 2 more in Garrett Williams out of Syracuse and Khalil Trell Clark out of Louisville. Arizona had one of the worst defenses against the pass last season, giving up the highest completion percentage in the league, and was ranked 30th in completions allowed and 28th in touchdown passes allowed and touchdowns per attempt. Damn. The Cardinals added much needed depth and perhaps a starter or two after losing Byron Murphy to the Vikings in free agency. So the Cardinals are not expected to be great. The Cardinals are probably going to be really bad this season. Their over-under is at 5.5. So I don't think they're going to hit that. Some of the over-unders that I just can't get on board with, like Phillies, after going through their schedule, I could understand why Phillies at 10.5, but I think I would still take the over on that. I don't think Philly's going to lose 7 games. I think that they're going to be good. The Jets are at 9.5. I can see them winning 10 games as well. Then you have Jacksonville at 9.5. That's a 10-win football team in the division they're in for sure. And the Texans at 5.5. I wouldn't touch that. Packers 7.5. I don't want it. Detroit at 9. That's like if they were at 8.5, I would take 9, but I'm not going 9.5. Well, 10. I'm not doing that. Cincinnati Bengals are at 11.5. If they were at 10, I would go 11, but 12, that's tough. Baltimore Ravens are at 8.5, which I do think you could take the over on that. Baltimore at 8.5. If Lamar can stay healthy, this should be a 9-win football team. This should be I mean, think about it. They could go 9-8. So, that you would win at that point. I mean, I think that's reasonable to believe that they can go 9-8. I understand they have a tough division and all that, but they can squeak out 9 wins just from, the other teams that they play. Um, Although I haven't done their strength of schedule yet, but that seems doable. And there was a couple more in here. The Buccaneers at 6.5. I feel like I would take the under for them. And the Cardinals are at 5.5. I would take the under there as well, for sure. Steve said, Morgan Freeman has had an amazing career. Much respect. Dude can do comedy, serious roles, documentaries, you name it. He's done it. And Morgan Freeman is definitely, I know I didn't remember his name, but I'm actually a huge fan of him. I think that dude is just a stand-up guy. If everybody in the world was like him, it would be a better place. And Bill said, if you want a non-typical Nicholson movie, check out As Good as It Gets. I will watch that movie. I'll watch it, and I'm going live tomorrow. I'll give everybody my feedback on it. Hopefully it's on Amazon or Netflix or HBO, because I don't have cable. But yeah, man, that is it for today's episode. We'll be going live again tomorrow. But thank you guys for being in here. We had a pretty good crowd today, and I always appreciate, because we have, Bill knows there's some days where I come in here, we got one person. That's okay. You got to just trust the process. Luckily for me, I love doing this, so I don't really get discouraged. I really enjoy doing it. So, but it does feel good when I see that there's some people in here. So, anybody that tuned in today, I really appreciate you being in here. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I assume you guys have. But in any case, if you haven't, I totally appreciate that. And I will be going back live tomorrow for an Only Football episode. And I will be bringing some more strength to schedule, working through more teams. I've done probably like 7 teams. My goal is to try to get to 16 by the end of this week. And once I have it all together, then I can just organize it, by team, and leave out all the other stuff. So I'll be working on that. Bill said, and come back more often. We can be a fun bunch. Yeah, we have a good time in here. Yeah, especially once football season starts. It gets a little rowdy sometimes. But as always, thank you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night. Hope you have great dreams and great sleep. Sleep on your back. It's good for your spine. And I'll see you guys soon. See ya.